Excellent. All right. Today I am going to talk to you about finding a job or the job interview process. I just made this title up. That's pretty much like an interview. So the first step would be, how do you get an interview? There are a couple of different sources that I have used. A recruiter, you can go directly onto a company website or a job-seeking website like Indeed or things like that. Or the best answer is through networking. And what I'd like to start off is by showing you my resume. That was something that I was most curious about is, what does a resume look like for a new person? This is my resume now. I've had one job. I just started a new job last week. And I have broken it down into concepts. These are actually some of my college courses. Those of you who've done free code camp or online trainings, you can actually put that experience on your resume in these little sections here. Like I have advanced C#. That was a class I took. That isn't any type of professional experience, but I've listed it on there that way. I also have at the top here speaking, which is something people really love. You can do a lightning talk, put that on there. It's a great thing to talk about. I also have, my education here and some of like my GPA, things like that, things that I thought would be useful for not having a fully technical resume at that point in time. So you've submitted your resume to someone and you have an interview. Now what? The first thing I like to do is to look at the technologies in the job description and research them, especially if you're not familiar. I did some interviews recently for jobs that required Entity Framework. I had never even heard of Entity Framework at the time. So I did a quick Google search, tried to figure out, what it was, what might be happening, so I could say, yes, I don't know about this, but I do know that this describes it in one sentence. Another thing to do is to research the company itself that you're interviewing at. You'll want to find out what they do, what their mission is, what their product is, what they're making, as well as how they're involved in the community. A lot of communities do community service, or they sponsor meetup groups, so that's definitely something good that you can present. Hey, I researched you, I'm interested in this position. And one of the most important things I found is try and find someone in your network that works there. I had an interview at a place recently. There was a guy that I did not know, but through networking, coming to events like this, I knew one person who knew him. So we were put in touch on Slack, on the Techlahoma Slack. We did a quick chat, and I got some honest feedback about what this job's like. People are definitely willing to share that information with you if you just reach out to them. I didn't have to talk to them on the phone. I'm an introvert, so it was definitely pretty easy. But using your network is very, very important. So you have this interview, and what's it going to be like? My experience was that there are typically 2 interviews. The initial interview went over my qualifications, what my experience was, things that I had done. And the second interview was typically more detailed, and it usually covered things like team fit, personality, more of what the specifics of this job are versus what you know or what you have the ability to learn. So what should you expect in an interview? And this is, again, based just on my experience. I went on quite a few interviews very recently. The first thing that worried me was, will I be doing coding? Sure, I can code at home, and I can code happily when Google's right there, but can I code in front of people? Maybe. In the interview, they had some simple questions, and they told me it was just a pen and a piece of paper. And they said, it doesn't matter if your syntax is wrong. We're here to see that you can, communicate what you're doing and the reasoning behind it. So I had to just write a simple function that did stuff. And I was like, well, here's why I would put this on 2 lines. It didn't matter that I was trying to use a method that didn't even exist. Another question, this was my biggest question, was do I need to bring a laptop? The answer for me was no. A lot of times they will provide, if you needed to do something on a laptop, they would provide that for you, or it would be like a remote interview where you'd be on your laptop in the first place. Because that was one of the things that worried me the most is, well, I don't have a great laptop. Do I need to bring this? What should I expect? And, what kind of questions are they going to ask? Questions that I encountered were, the general, what are your strengths? What's your greatest weakness? Rank your skills, which kind of took me by surprise. I'd never thought about, well, I'm better than this, and kind of ranking that on the fly. Questions about what I currently do. Definitely include your portfolio or practice work. What do you currently do? Well, I've gone through, for example, Free Code Camp or Code School, and I have, completed this course. I've learned these things. Another question was how a project or a technology works and design decisions that you made with that. Another common question was, what's your process for troubleshooting a problem? And I kind of broke that down into, these are the steps I take, here's where I look. And another question was, what type of environment do you prefer? Open office, cubicles, closed offices? And I found that that was one that I definitely wanted to answer honestly, because I don't want to go, personally, I don't want to be in an open office situation. I kind of need that separation. And if you say that that's something you prefer, then that might not be a great fit for you. But the most common question that I was asked is, what is a project that you're most proud of and why? So that's something that you definitely want to kind of have prepared ahead. That's something that you will most likely wind up talking about through the entire interview is, I made this thing, or I did this piece of this thing, and I got to choose these things, or these things were chosen for me because of the parameters. And being able to explain what you did and how to someone who is completely unfamiliar with that project. And that was a recurring theme, and that was one of the things that was talked about most in my interviews. So you've gone through your second interview, and you have some questions about them. Definitely always ask questions. One of the things that I found most important was how to find out if there's diversity. It's okay to be the only woman on a team, but you definitely kind of want to try and see the team and figure out what's going on to see if you're a good fit. One of the ways that I accomplished this was by saying, hey, can I meet the team, or can I see the work environment? Which was for me a more subtle way to find out, like, hey, am I going to be the only woman here, etc. So, you could subtly walk through, see who's around, see how people are interacting, and look at the environment, see if you can, feel that this is a tense place. Maybe this isn't for me, or, hey, look, everyone's being friendly and chatting. This is what I want. Another tip is to know your worth. Know, what salaries are. Don't be underpaid. Don't be afraid to speak to other people and talk about, what the going rates are and things like that. And you may be qualified for a job perfectly. Your skill set may be a great match, but some non-programming aspects might not be the right fit for you. Like I mentioned earlier, they may be an open concept office, and you definitely do better in a closed environment. Or their work schedule or their lack of flexibility just isn't for you. And it's, as I said before, know your worth. Don't take a job for $5 an hour just because. Know that you are worth more than that. You have skills, you have learned, and you have tried really hard for this. And we're definitely all here to support you in that. I've had to have many pep talks of, no, you can do this. Look at all the things you've done. And my final tip would definitely be to negotiate. Even in a big corporate culture where you would not expect that they would be flexible on things, you can always negotiate salary if that's something that they can't budge on. You can negotiate, time for flexibility. You can negotiate vacation. And I didn't think that that would necessarily be applicable in a corporate culture, a large company, but it definitely is. So you need to take inventory of what you want and go out there and get it, because there's definitely something that's going to be right for you. Thank you.